Um, does UCLA athletics have to declare bankruptcy or something? The Dodgers turn to their top prospect to boost the lineup, and USC football loses the crown jewel of its recruiting class. Good morning. I'm James. And this is your daily dose of sports and snark for the greatest sports city in the world, Los Angeles. This is the Faithful Angelenos Morning Report. It's May 15, 2025, and we have an absolute ton of sports news to get to this morning. So if you like being in the know about LA sports, click the like button. Click the subscribe button. There's a notification bell. Hit that. It'll let you know when we drop new content. Sharing is caring. Let people know we exist, and by all means comment. Now, before we go through the news notes, a quick look at the scoreboard. Dodgers 9, Sacramento 3. The Dodgers' magic number, because we all know it's only a matter of time before they win the NL West. The magic number is 120. Also, Philadelphia 3, Galaxy 2. The Union rally from 2 goals down and win in stoppage time. The defending MLS Cup champ Galaxy are on a 13-match winless streak in MLS to open the season. And LAFC defeated Seattle 4-0. Meanwhile, today, Sacramento is at the Dodgers at 7 o'clock. And what do you say we get to the news? Okay, talking money, talking numbers, talking politics. It's really not the type of stuff that translates into thrilling YouTube content. But if you're a UCLA fan, stick with me, because this is an alarm. This is way much larger than the LA Times is playing it. See, the LA Times reported that a special committee of UC regents spoke with UCLA officials this week about the debt crisis. And believe you me, this is actually a crisis in the Bruins athletic department. Because they were looking at the finances, and then suddenly somebody screamed, "Who gave the credit cards to the crack addicts?" You know how, let me tell you, put it to you this way. For UCLA, you know you ran up way too much debt for a state official to say something like, "Bruh, you got a spending problem." UCLA Athletics has a $219 million deficit. They are that far in the red. They have been running in the red for 6 consecutive years, and they're going to add another $52 million in debt this fiscal year. Remember, when UCLA left the Pac-12 to go to the Big Ten conference, this was supposed to be like the last lifeboat off the Titanic. The Big Ten is supposed to send like an annual $52 million, $60 million, maybe on Cash App. But that apparently isn't even going to make a dent in the bill. Bob Myers, who is a UC regent, played on the Bruins' 1995 national title-winning basketball team, said, quote, "It's like water's coming in the boat and you're trying to get it out, but how does this thing not sink?" Unquote. How does this thing not sink? That should be alarming to every Bruins fan. Should panic the hell out of you if you like UCLA athletics. It's not like Martin Jarmond can go make extra money on DoorDash. But UCLA officials went through this typical political evasive doublespeak. They piled the bullcrap so high that Amy Schumer could hang glide off it. They were saying things like, "Oh, we have a fairly substantial challenge ahead of us. We will endeavor to address it. We have got to do more. We are looking at other revenue streams." That is the type of crap you tell a student loan debt collector. And here's the thing. I hate to clown the guy, but the Times sent the wrong guy for this story. No offense to Ben Bulge, but a sports writer's specialty is sports. This is a public agency, the UC. Which means you should be sending somebody who knows government speak. Or you should send a business writer who could explain the fallout from owing hundreds of millions of dollars. Those are the type of scribes that should have been there, not a sports writer, because Jarmond is breathing breathing scampi. He's breathing spoiled milk in our ears about the potential renovations at the Rose Bowl or Poly Pavilion to sell as premium seating for a revenue stream. Guys, that's not happening. Not for a while, at the very minimum. Not without bonds being sold, not without a benefactor, random investors coming in to cut a check. And even if they made the Rose Bowl as state-of-the-art as SoFi Stadium, Bruins football does not draw crowds now. So you're whistling past the graveyard. You are fooling yourselves thinking that the football team all of a sudden, even with Nico Iamaleava, is going to draw that kind of money. If I were the scribe, and I am no business writer, to be clear, I would start by asking UC, well, one, if you thought UCLA was in this much debt, why the hell did you take millions of dollars of Big Ten money away from UCLA to pay off Cal Berkeley? Part of this, not all of this, but part of this is on you. Is it not? Explain. Secondly, I would go to UCLA and demand transparency. If they are a public school, you can get transparency out of them, allegedly. Much more so than you can get out of USC, which is a privately owned school. You're more than $100 million in debt a couple of years ago, UCLA was, right? So they go and they get a settlement from Under Armour. There was a uniform deal they had with Under Armour that blew to smithereens. So they get the check from Under Armour. They take that money. They should have applied it to the $100 million and $100+ million in debt, which would have gotten the debt down to $60 million, which sucks, right? But now, just a couple of years later, it's gone from 60 million to 200 million. What happened? How did this happen? Because last year, the school had to front the athletic department $30 million just to stay afloat. Now, you could say, this is where the real problem begins, because you could say that money came from an endowment fund or whatever, but money is fungible. Money that the school hands over to the athletic department is money that the school could have used somewhere else. That is why money is fungible. That is why the bad guys in movies don't give you a check. They carry suitcases full of cash because it cannot be traced. Money is fungible. Is it possible that the money that people pay to send their kids to UCLA to get an education isn't going to the education, but it's going to Martin Jarmond? That is a problem. Where did the money go? Because a couple of years ago, we were talking about these extravagant checks that Chip Kelly was cutting for assistant coaches, some of whom didn't even get on the field. There was one guy who was with UCLA football for 1 year called a director of something. I forget. It was a really hokey BS title. He spent 1 year sitting in a cubicle at UCLA for no reason, then wound up being the head coach over at San Jose State. The guy got almost $1 million out of it. Now, meanwhile, Jarmond is also talking about an extra $5 million in travel expenses, but that's just $5 million. The debt last year, again, was $52 million. And these stalling tactics from UCLA about the state of the athletic problem are getting ridiculous. Jarmond, for example, said he listened in on the exit meetings for athletes after the Bruins' first year of the Big Ten and concluded that cross-country travel, quote, was not an issue, unquote. Which I'm sure was a surprise to basketball coach Mick Cronin, but I digress. The scribe took Jarmond at his word and concluded that all those frequent flyer miles on Allegiant Air were just neato. Stop it. I fly at least 2-3 times a week. Flying is not neato, particularly when you go on cheapo airlines. It's like flying anywhere these days is like taking the Metrolink with wings. So you ask yourself, if you guys can't stop spending, what happens next? Does UCLA try to turn the athletic dorms into Section 8 housing? Do the athletes get paid? Do the athletes have to eat government cheese? Just admit it. You need the damn money. Don't act like all those extra flyer miles are not a big deal to the athletes. They are. What happens? Does UCLA eventually have to cut athletic teams completely? We're not getting the truth. And I realize that was a long screed with a lot of numbers, but $200+ million of debt is a problem. If the Dodgers were $200+ million in debt, they would be up for sale. No ifs, ands, or buts. And speaking of the Dodgers, to switch topics, it's about time. Dalton Rushing, the top prospect in the Dodgers farm system, has escaped the Midwest manure pit of Oklahoma City and given a shot at the majors. And from the looks of things, he's going to have every shot under the sun to stay. Here's why. Rushing was drafted as a catcher. He's been rated anywhere from 16th to 22nd in people's top 100 prospect rankings. Now, you might sit there and go, dude, he's not going to be starting over Will Smith, which is totally fair. But by the time he got to AAA, the Dodgers started throwing him out in left field. A lovely piece of foresight by the front office, because the Dodger outfield is a hot mess. They were going to start the season with an outfielder of Teoscar Hernandez, Tommy Edman in center, and Michael Conforto. Edman moved to second base to replace Hai-Song Kim. Hernandez got hurt, and Conforto, he's hitting like the batter's box is covered in banana peels. So there's a chance for him to rollerblade past Andy Pages, James Outman, Kike Hernandez, Chris Taylor. Moreover, to make room for Rushing on the roster, backup catcher Austin Barnes was designated for assignment, which is not a small thing. So the point is, Rushing is going to get at bats one way or another. The guy has been described as an on-base machine. Now, as for Barnes, the Dodgers issued their perfunctory "thanks for everything" tweet. After all, 2 rings. He was their longest tenured player. And people were calling it a shocking move, but it really isn't. Backup catchers are not untouchable. This is not shocking. And the Dodgers are deep in catching prospects. So if anything, this move is a shot across the bow to tell Outman, Pages, Conforto, Taylor, one of y'all better pick up the slack or you could be next. Also with the Dodgers, pitcher Roki Sasaki said he doesn't believe shoulder impingement is the reason that his velocity dropped. But who knows? You're on the injured list, my dude. You have time to figure it out. I'd hate to say I told you so. And the reason I hate to say I told you so is because we all knew this was going to happen. So I didn't necessarily tell you so. But a top 30 recruit, the crown jewel of USC football's recruiting class of 2026, linebacker Xavier Griffin has decommitted. Stop me if you have heard this before too. The recruit is from, wait for it, Georgia. You know, it's really funny too. Because for a state that prides itself on good old Southern Christian ethics, Europe, when it comes to football, that state is a legion full of Judases. You can't rely on their word at all. Because if you remember, 2 recruits from Georgia stabbed the Trojans in the back last year. Now, having said that, I wouldn't sweat this too much. I wouldn't. USC has 27 other players pledged. They have 13 in the ESPN top 300 among those recruits. They have more than a dozen from California. So, and I was telling you guys weeks ago, I was suggesting the odds were good that players would turn and run. Even if it was as many as a half dozen, I wouldn't be sweating it. Now, Griffin decommitted because USC, for good reason, put in a policy that when you pledge, don't take any more recruiting trips. We've had enough. Griffin wanted to take recruiting trips. And so he's out. Bless his heart. The Players Union for the NWSL said the Angel City-Utah match Friday should have stopped after defender Savi King collapsed on the field, where she ultimately needed chest compressions and eventually had heart surgery earlier this week. Stop the match because, duh. Now, I don't know how many of you are in a union, but I do know this. If I were a union employee and if I died on the job, I too would want my representative to speak on my behalf in about a week. Yes, take a few nights, sleep on it, maybe have yourself a delicious can of Fresca, and then come out and say, you know, James dying was wrong. Maybe you should look at your protocols, if you would be so kind. Sincerely, the union. The Kings officially named Ken Holland as general manager. We've been talking about this over the last few days. I believe it's a home run hire with the goal not simply to get out of the first round, but to make a big run past Edmonton and Las Vegas, possibly even in the regular season. Holland is best known for turning the Detroit Red Wings from the dead things into a dynasty. Now, obviously, his first big decision is whether to retain Jim Hiller as coach. They do have a history in the Detroit system. Galaxy general manager Will Kuntz has been going on an apology tour of sorts, one podcast after another, to explain why the defending champs have played more than 1/3 of the season and have exactly 0 MLS wins to show for it. And we've covered those reasons over the course of the year. There's little reason to repeat it. What I can tell you is Kuntz said midfielder Ricky Puig, arguably the linchpin of the team, is, quote, progressing really well, unquote, in his recovery from knee surgery. Puig, a Spaniard, he's been rehabbing his repaired anterior cruciate ligament over in Barcelona. He will be in town to watch El Tráfico this weekend, to which I would ask, are you sure? Are you really that sure? But anyway, Kuntz did not offer specifics as to when Puig will return to the pitch. He said there is a fixed timeline to recover. A Google search says that's about 6 to 12 months. It's been 6 months since the surgery, guys. Just wondering out loud. Do you want a little insight into Rams team culture? Defensive end Jared Verse went on a podcast I don't listen to and said that last summer when he was a rookie, quote, we started doing the full team workouts and I was going crazy. I was getting through the offense, getting to Matthew Stafford, getting to the running backs. So I'm loud, I'm screaming. Verse then said McVay initially gave a warning. Hey, we don't do that here. Coach said stop. McVay just stopped. He's like, stop that. We don't do that here. These are your teammates. He really got on me, unquote. Now, it's one thing to say McVay blasted Verse like one of those old school hothead coaches, like really insulted him back. Not true. McVay then pulled Verse to the side and told Verse, we love the energy, but the Rams are a family and respect for your teammates is a starter, is essential. It's a non-negotiable. And of course, Verse took that message to heart and he became an essential to the Rams. So they do things a little differently over with Sean McVay and the Rams. But you let me know what you think in the comments thread. Talk to me, for example. Are you in a state of panic over UCLA athletics? Because if you're not, you might want to consider it. And for that matter, is Dalton Rushing the panacea the Dodgers offense so desperately needs? And if you enjoy the content, don't forget to subscribe to Faithful Angelenos. We're talking LA sports every single day here. Thank you for watching. I'm James. We'll be back tomorrow. Faithful Angelenos is a Kian Corte El Queso production. Take care.